The season's not even underway yet, and there's already been a bit of spotlight being put on Bulls coach John Mitchell, both from other coaches. So Swiss the Brains come out and said, I think the media might have made a bit more of it, but he said that everyone's watching the Bulls to see what happens. So the media have kind of made it out that the Bulls are the one to watch, according to Coach Swiss. But it's normal for coaches before the start of the season to talk up the opposition, just to kind of deflect any attention away from themselves at the start of the season. But spotlight's been put on John Mitchell. One of his own players, Roloff Smith, has come out and said he's great. So I thought we'll have a look. How great is he? Is he really a great coach who's kind of been hard done by, or is he just kind of some nomadic coach who manages to keep leeching onto contracts every now and again? So his first major coaching job, his first work was really in England, over with Sale, but his first kind of main job in Super Rugby terms was with the Chiefs in 2001, and he took them through that season back when there were 12 teams, and his record was 6 wins, 5 losses, and no draws. So that was good enough for 6 out of 12 teams, so kind of a middling result. And you missed the playoffs back in those days at 6 because only the top 4 teams made the cut. So yeah, a decent season. And then he was virtually immediately appointed All Blacks coach straight after that. He was with the All Blacks for a couple of years, had a really difficult relationship with the media. A lot of tense and cold kind of back and forth between them, and as like little interaction as possible. Yeah, the reporting, especially during 2003 World Cup, was difficult, and then when they went out the way they did, the media just kind of swooped on him, because when he was winning, he wasn't playing ball. So when you're losing, they can just write whatever they want, basically. So yeah, he wasn't reappointed coach of the All Blacks. I think he finished with a win ratio of like 80-something%. So pretty good. And you have to remember, back in those days, the All Blacks, because while they've been dominant in the last few years, they weren't as dominant back then. When he took over the All Blacks job, the All Blacks didn't even have the Bledisloe Cup. The Aussies had it. And there are some people who've gone through probably their whole life not knowing that Australia's even ever had the thing, because it's been that long since they've had it. But yeah, so he was the one who kind of reclaimed it from Australia, who'd had it for 4 or 5 years before that, in kind of the Gregan era. So yeah, not well regarded by most of the New Zealand public for his time at the All Blacks, but his record was fine. He just didn't do the job at the World Cup, which is not unique to him for All Blacks coaches anyway. So from there, he went on to the Western Force. He was their first ever coach. And interestingly, Swiss for this season, Swiss the Brains quote said, he's got a good track record in his first year. Well, not with the Western Force he didn't. In their first year, and you can kind of forgive it because it was a newly established team in 2006. 1 win, 10 losses and 2 draws, good enough for the wooden spoon, 14 out of 14. But from there, admittedly, there was a pretty decent improvement. So the next season, 2007, they went 6-6-1 for a middling result, same as what he had with the Chiefs. He finished 7-14, 6 out of 12. So yeah, decent. But that's kind of where the development stopped and just kind of plateaued. So next couple of seasons finished 8th out of 14, so 6-1 in 2009 and 7-6-0 in 2008. So nothing to really write home about. And you might think, well, he was coaching the Western Force, they were never that good. They had a decent team in that era. They had a few of the stars. They were really good at signing emerging players, like, James O'Connor started with the Force. Matt Giddo used to play for the Force. Nathan Sharp played a lot of his career at the Force. So a lot of kind of big Aussie rugby names. played over at the Force, so they shouldn't have been a whipping boy by any means, and he was getting middling results out of them. You could argue he should have done better. Things weren't all that settled in the Western Force camp, and there were stories of players complaining about his methods, about being treated poorly. Supposedly, of the 36 players on contract in the first team, 30 of them signed a petition to get him kind of reviewed or barred or something like that. So yeah, he had a pretty difficult relationship with his players at the Force. Supposedly in one match at halftime, he was just ripping into the players at halftime in the sheds, and he just left in a rage, and they locked the door behind him. They didn't want anything to do with him, had enough. So he managed to hang on to his job until the 2010 season, which must have been pretty tense for a 4-9-0 record, good enough for second to last, and that was his last season before he stepped down. I think he had one more season to run on his contract, but he left. So, I mean, he got them into mediocrity but didn't push on. So, if you're a great coach, I feel like you take the next step here. But in a lot of what he writes, because he wrote his own autobiography, it's kind of the onus gets shifted back to the club. Well, I was ready to push the club on, but the club, for whatever reason, didn't do what I thought was right. So that's why they didn't do as well. Kind of choose who you believe with that one. And sorry, I had to use the Reds logo here because I don't have a Force. Sorry, Rebels. I don't have a Force logo, and it's the closest one we have for this season, with so many Force players now being at the Rebels. So he quickly moved on to the Lions, who were really bad in the season before he took over. They didn't get any wins. They lost all their games. So in those 2 years, 3-12-0, second to last, and 3-13-0 for last. Actually, that's 3-12-1. Those have to be the same amount of numbers. So yeah, second to last and last. No idea. I mean, he did win a Curry Cup with his time with the Golden Lions, because he was kind of running both jobs, as a lot of the coaches do in South Africa. But yeah, that Super Rugby form's not great. And again, issues with the players. So he argues that he was kind of unfairly ousted by political motivations. The players just said that he wasn't up to it, and his coaching methods were bad, and he swore at them too much. I mean, from personal experience, I mean, it's really hard to say as anecdotally, but a lot of the South Africans I've met, because there's a lot over here in New Zealand, there are a lot, especially the quite religious ones, that don't swear at all. I mean, there are some South Africans that will swear like sailors, but there are some that are quite conservative, so I'm not sure if he had a bit of a cultural difference with some of his players. Hard to know if you're not there. But yeah, so that's kind of two teams, and even at the All Blacks, he rubbed a lot of guys up the wrong way. There was an infamous thing where he dropped Christian Cullen, who was the golden boy of the New Zealand rugby team at that kind of generation, and said, oh no, I didn't pick him because he's injured, and he came back and said, no, I'm not injured, he's just dropped me. And there was, yeah, Tana didn't like him, supposedly. Scott Robertson, the Crusaders coach, didn't like him because he said he would never give him a straight answer. He would ask him, what do you want me to do? And each time he would answer him something different. And that's another thing about him, is he does have a really, like, he's quite into his self-help books, like development stuff. And that's, like, a lot of those books, some people will read it and go, yeah, that's really inspirational and really a good learning to make. And other people will look at it and go, well, that's a load of rubbish. So maybe his way of communication kind of is lacking. I mean, I saw an interview with Dan McKellar, the Brumbies coach, recently, and he talked about, because he's shifted up from the assistant coach level to the head job this year, And he said one of the main shifts is just you're less focused on the details of your job and more focused on big picture and man management. It seems like man management is his main problem. He just doesn't know how to deal with people. He annoys people, or somehow it just really makes them angry, makes them not want to buy in. But those who do buy in, kind of like the self-help books, are quite loyal to him. Like Ruben Thorne, who was All Blacks captain under him, was quite loyal. I think Justin Marshall was kind of a fan of his. So, yeah, and this new guy coming out with the Bulls, saying that he's really into it. So some people just seem to get him and some people don't. Whether his first year is one to watch, you'd look at this and go, maybe not. But we will see. Supposedly there's a revolution going on at Loftus. I guess time will tell. But yeah, he does apparently have a notorious temper and is often classified as kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde character. He'll show up one day and be kind of relaxed and mild-mannered and yeah, just kind of have a yarn, and then other times he'll just be just livid and just swearing, and yeah, there's just so many reports of like reporters hearing him in the coach's box and just being like, wow, that guy's losing it. So if nothing else, he is a very colourful character. It's a bit of pressure on him for this season, but the Bulls have kind of said that they're in rebuild mode, so we'll see how well he does. I should also mention that he's rightly or wrongly given a lot of the credit for turning the Lions around. Even though the success was kind of achieved under Ackerman, there are a lot of people who say that it was kind of the foundation was set by the work John Mitchell did with them. Don't know. I guess we'll see. The Bulls, if he can stay long enough, will be his truest test. If he can keep the players on side long enough to keep coaching them, that is. All right, that's another one in the can from me, and yeah, I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.